not been addressed. You know, there is some air of encouragement, but removing it from that clause of optional, you know, is still a problem to battle. So we started there, and not just that, we also hosted the Igbo Teachers Conference. Now, to begin to teach them, yes, to begin to teach them how to step away from that low self-esteem look that we used to see when we visited secondary schools. To begin to teach them how to present themselves as Ndenkuzi Kwesirin Sopuro, the teachers that are supposed to be respected as just like any other teacher in their schools. And how to begin to not just teach people like it's just a tiring thing, but to make students to understand that they are also people who should be advocates, not just teachers. And so that was a very interesting, beautiful journey that we are still on. I think when COVID hit, it paused Oja Cultural Festival, but and then security and all of that, but we are interested in taking it up again. We used to do it from crowdfunding. It was surprising, from Facebook. That was where we were raising funds to host these festivals, and it was successful. So we are going to do it again and again and again in a bigger way. So the journey with the survival of Igbo language is not something we started today. And then before you go to the aspect of my
that's right.
kept traveling and going from every part of our life, including I have actually traveled to Lagos, Abuja. I traveled to Calabar, Port Harcourt many times to go and perform. It was not just about being a performer, but also an evangelist who lived what she is preaching. So I kept performing, I kept talking, I kept evangelizing, I kept talking about it from state to state, community to community, church to church, school to school, talking about the importance of sustaining our language and heritage as a people. And I am grateful that today we can say, yes, there is some level of change in the air. And I can say, yes, I agree. And I am happy that today we are actually saying, okay, we are seeing results from those years of effort.
Adema, you know, listening to all the stories, and I've witnessed countless performances from you, so it's not surprising, the story you're telling. Just for the benefit of those who didn't have the privilege of watching you on stage. But have you had time to perform abroad? I've seen some videos where you're also, you know, in your usual gait, you are moving around. How, if you are asked to compare, which one is different? As an akani wa yakaka babula yaka. Manawala kan kaka.
Oh, it's your. Oh, if you move walk, we have a good knock at sick and to Maranke, Imagonu, Nkana, Qualigume, Makana, or Josiam Hakona Pusiosi. You do not stop just because you change location. Actually, before I came to the United States, I started from going to Ghana to present papers on this, and then to South Africa on the invitation of the European Festival Association. That was for Oja Festival. And then we started getting invitations to the UK, where I went to perform a couple of times. And from the UK, going a couple of times in single invitations, I was then invited by the British Council National Theatre, which is the biggest theatre in the UK, to come and not just perform and go, but to work for them. Before then, I was already on a national TV show, which is a hero show in Lagos, in Nigeria, and I was already in the semi-finals. But the UK wouldn't allow me to finish the final.
They had to cut it short. How I don't bring from Dobirigi.
Yes, so they actually wrote Lagos and said, you know, she wouldn't be able to participate because they allowed me. I stayed over the date they wanted me in the UK because I insisted I wanted to perform for that semi-finals, having prepared for it. So after that, I moved to the UK and stayed for over 5 months working with the National Theatre. So in the UK, I performed about 200 and something performances because that was 52 shows of a show called The Three Sisters. It's a theatre show. And in each of the shows, I performed 4 times for the play. So if you check 4 times than 52, that was above 200 performances. And that was powerful. This was a theater that was 900-seater, and it was filled every day for the 52 shows. So that was thousands and thousands and thousands of people watching me perform in Igbo language. In the theater, they spoke in English, but I was told to perform only in Igbo. There was no translation given for my performance. The translation was for the house, in-house. But for the people, the audience coming to watch it, no translation. I was like a mystical character. And to tell you how powerful this is, the National Theatre director saw me where I came to perform. I did an evening with Amarachi, and that was where she saw me. I was not part of that play initially, but they had to include me to be an introducer of each of the scenes, and it became something powerful. That was the first time, although I was performing for non-Igbos, that was the first time that I would finish performances and people will come to you and ask you for autographs and all of those things. I
take a sign here. I take a sign here.
That was when we started autographing. But before then, I wouldn't lie to you, sometimes I didn't get as much support as I would have back home, especially in the beginning. But towards that 2018-19, the acceptance started growing. And that was why I could go and perform in Abuja. I remember getting an invitation to come and perform for the US ambassador to Nigeria or something like that. Started performing for foreigners as a way of showing them part of our cultures. And Port Harcourt and Lagos. I remember performing in a Dire Festival, which was a Yoruba festival. And I came to perform an Igbo chant for Yoruba audience. So that was interesting. So I insisted on actually performing for non-Igbo, even while I was in Nigeria, so that it is not just about Kandi Igbo, but marketability of your art and craft, your culture. Because Korea, I used to like Korean movies. Sometimes I forget it's actually acted in Korea, and I'm just watching and following the story. And a lot of us used to do that back home. You see us watching foreign movies, and we are so interested in it. So how do you market yours so that other people who do not understand we appreciate it as art? Because art is not about you getting the message or the theme, but about you translating it to what it means to you. So I started that back home, and towards that few years later, there was acceptance before I started traveling. And after the UK, I came back and then decided to further my studies in something that will support more of what I am doing, because I did a master's in Nigeria, mass communication in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. But decided to go for another master's for cultural heritage preservation and museum studies, so that not only will I be speaking about what I am doing back home, but to make sure that I am actually empowered to speak to because when I went to the UK, there was something interesting. Going to the British Museum, seeing a lot of our artifacts, and all of that, masquerades, first of masquerades. Mana ida na ba anyị asị gị na ihe niile a bụcha ihe ọjọọ, mana ọ nọcha na museum ha, ma nke a kpọrọ Mgbedike ifu ebe ahụ, ị na-asị ọkwasị na Mgbedike bụzi ajọ ma ọ bụzi ekwesu, ka ezi ka ha bụrụ ekwesu dozie na museum ha. So I wanted something that would give me that power to be able to go into spaces and speak and evangelize in the most confident way that I could, and make sure that I am able to garner impact. And that was when I decided to further my academics and came here. I did heritage preservation and museum studies in Syracuse University. And when I was done, just as I was about to graduate, I got a call that somebody has recommended me to be at Harvard. And that was how it all happened. So It has been an interesting journey. That's no ihe onye na-eme ka eji amị ya. Onye na-emekwanụ chi ya na-akwara ya ụzọ. Aga m asị na ọchị nke m na-akwara m ụzọ.
That's right.
Na-eti mkpu a na-akwu ose a na-aga ụzọ na-akwara m. Nwobe ihe m ga-asị gị na onwe ebe m batara. Ndị mmadụ asịba gị kedu ihe na-akọ eri. Ọ na mbido ka a kọrọ ụdịrị ha asị ga-eji igbo eme gịnị. Mana ugbu a bụ ị na-agazi chi ga na-akwara gị ụzọ. Knowing that this is my path, this is my life, this is my journey, I don't have to try to fit in.
That's
I am
right.
just placed, by providence where I should just be shining, and
Perfect.
I am doing that.
Yeah, Adema, the story is so edifying, and when they again tonight, well, but they just need to listen to your story and be encouraged not to lose hope. So let's talk about Igbo language and how people are approaching the language and learning and teaching Igbo language, especially at the family levels. Are you concerned, really, that with all the efforts you are putting in and some other people that are trying, that the language is not getting the support it deserves in terms of people handing it down to the next generation? There is, I don't want to say a total lack of interest. Do you think that's a big problem?
Yes, it is a big problem. It is a big problem in the sense that na inanya na ala anyị taa ị ga-akwụ na onwe n'ihe dị iche. Anyị chere na ha rụtụ aka na asụsụ omenala mana ile anyị hụ nọ na-arụtụkwa. Ile anyị hụ na ala bụzi ebe a na-ebuzo ọchụ. Ihe na-emezibe anyị ugbu a bụzi ihe na-atụ ụjọ. Ihe mmadụ na-echeghị n'echiche. Maka na nkụzi ihe gbasara mkparamagwa a na-abịa enyefe site na agbụrụ ruo na agbụrụ. Ịtụ ilu na ịghọta ilu atụrụ. Ihe gbasara ala na ikike dị n'ala. Ihe ji anyị mgbọrọgwụ ji anyị dịka ndị ha niile bụ ndị anyị lefuru anya. We have ignored it. We push them by the side. And the repercussion is part of what we are seeing today. Parents no longer raise their children. I am sorry to say, but today we see a situation where young people are beginning to rule over their parents. The languages with which we are supposed to transmit the deep philosophical messages handed down to us by our ancestors have been thrown away. And so, nothing, because the language of the parents and the language of the children are totally different. There is no connection. So you cannot transmit something to someone when there is no medium of communication. We used to have festivals and a lot of things that we did that will enable people begin to learn some of the philosophies of their people. All of those things were thrown away to become who we are not. And so when you talk now, people rather just quotes, and they do nothing. So I would say it is a deep and huge concern, because the mass of knowledge, the depth of knowledge, philosophies, cultures, traditions of the people, which was embedded in their proverbs, in their songs, in their folks and folk songs, folklores, are all gone. It is not being transmitted. So kedu ihe ga-emezi ndị mmadụ na-etozi bụrụ ụsụ ha nọ n'elu ha nọ n'ala, maka na ị gaghị abụkwa na onye bekee otu a mbụ n'ala bekee. Ndị bekee agaghị asụkwa na ịbụzi onye be ha. Ọsọ gị na-asụ ya si n'imi nke a sụrụ ya pụta n'imi nke ọzọ. Ndị bekee agaghị asị gị na ịbụzi onye be anyị. Ya bụ na ọ ga-enwe ebe isi. There should be something about you, your own cultural identity. And that cultural identity, we refuse to transmit it because anyị chọrọ ịbụ ndị ọcha karịa ndị ọcha. So what is then happening is that you begin to see a land where we have 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds doing things that even adults are scared of. And they who's your even what I create or that was you one hand at will we sinner. Ala try also. The onye metara or Judisia making it puru. But all of these messages, all of these proverbs are no longer told, they are no longer transmitted. A lot of adults today do not know how to say any proverb, they don't even know one. So you see, you even ask them to break or not, they do not know what that means. So how do you now tell that child that also you know, so if you cannot tell that child that, how would they know that Igbo so it's something that should worry us as a people. But like just like you said, we seem to be a people not really concerned. But I would say all is not lost. Makana, a few years ago, there were times that people brag about not speaking the language and not care. Which means something is happening. People might not agree that something is happening, but it is. You begin to see a gradual air of acceptability. People are beginning to listen gradually. Yeah, they might not be acting as much as or as fast as we want, but you could see the acceptance is beginning to come. The people are beginning to add their voices. We now have a lot of chant performance artists, which when I started, people were asking me, but now we have a lot of young people, some of which I also mentored, actually going to events and performing, and people are accepting it. We begin to have skit makers who are doing skits in Igbo and in other dialects of Igbo language, and people are accepting it. So people now dare to have contents made in their language, which wasn't like that before. Everybody wanted to speak English, not just English, but even with accents. You see? But now you begin to see that people now create contents in their language, and people also accept it. Young people. So people we are not seeing the result as we should. Now you see a lot of people living in foreign countries who have children, half Igbo, half foreign, but they are also teaching their children Igbo. They are making content out of it, and people are following. They have millions of followers. So if you what is this? That time you see it is easy for celebrities to come and brag about how not connected to their culture they are, and people will clap for them. But if you try it now, I'm sure you will not sleep that night for what people will tell you.
Yeah. I got more again.
Yeah, people are becoming conscious.
That's right.
Yes. Even though we are not yet there. And why are we not yet there? I would say part of it is now. The leadership is not yet interested. That is not a good investment. So this is part of why you are not seeing the result as you.
That's right.
So when you continue to put effort and there is no something that will sustain you from that effort, most times people tend to, drive away from that because
one can easily tell you're action packed. So because if I don't stop you, you will continue talking. We will take a break. So when we come back, we will talk about your book, Igbo, a beginner's guide to learn how to read, understand, speak, and write the Igbo language. That's when we return from the break. Stay with us.
What is the state of the continent of Africa? How shall we interact with the rest of the world? Are we going to relate with the world in terms of donations or in terms of trade? Africa must define what she wants politically. Africa must define herself culturally. Africa must define herself spiritually, because Africa has no choice but to move forward, and forward she will move.
To the Eastern Eye here on Afia TV, a program that x-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. My name is Alex Obodo, and my guest is Amarachi Atama Ugu. She is an Igbo language instructor at the Harvard University, and she is my guest all the way from Colorado in the US. Okay, talk to us about that book. I think just freshly minted. Okay? Right. So, what is in the book? What is the book about? I'll be waiting. Can you head in here?
Igbo. Akwụkwọ kachasị wee buo ibu taa n'ihe gbasara ọmụmụ Igbo. Akwụkwọ a dịka isi efu Igbo, a beginner's guide to learn how to read, understand, speak, and write the Igbo language. Edere ya maka ndị chọrọ ịmụ asụsụ Igbo. Edere ya maka ndị niile na-amụ Igbo dịka asụsụ nke abụọ, that is the L2 learners, the second language learners. Ndị ahụ tokoronu, ndị na-achọ ka ụmụ ha ga-ebidozi wee bido mụwa Igbo. Ndị ahụ chebu na onweghị ihe Igbo bụ, mana ugbu a ha chọziri ịmụta asụsụ Igbo. Ndị ahụ nne na nna ha na-emekwa ka ha kụzie ụmụ ha Igbo na-esi ike. This is why this book is written. Having worked with a lot of kids, both back home and here in the United States, trying to learn the Igbo language, and having been in this field and looking at some gaps that we have. Ọtụtụ akwụkwọ anyị nwere na mbụ dị chamma, mana ọtụtụ n'ime ha edere ya maka ndị na-asụkwa Igbo maọbụ ndị nọ n'ala Igbo, which is the first language, L1 learners, first language learners. Mana o nwere ihe bụ na edere akwụkwọ maka onye na-amụta asụsụ Igbo, onye towegoro na-amụta asụsụ Igbo, dịka asụsụ nke abụọ, ọ mụta akwụkwọ Bekee na-asụ Bekee, chọsịrị ịmụta asụsụ. Which is why this book is very, very important. Not only was it carefully selected, carefully written, and carefully made to be simple, to be very, very in a simplified format. The tonal markings. That's what, and in Igbo, not Igbo, not Igbo, no Igbo. Igbo, no people say for Akaranwa. If anyone could any nature na akwụkwọ abụrụ Igbo twa akara dị ya. Ejiri akara tinye ya dee na Bekee. A na-ede ya n'Oyibo, a na-ede ya na Bekee na-agwa gị ihe ọ pụtara. Na-agwa gị ga-esi wee tinye olu, gị ga-esi wee ghọta ya. Gịnị ka m jitere akwụkwọ a? Ile anya, o nwere akwụkwọ ndị US dere, United States government. site na Foreign Language Institute ha dere na afọ I think 1968 ya bụ akwụkwọ ọ bụrụ ezigbo ibu ihe a bụ akwụkwọ ndị US dere dịka obodo the United States government dere ya site na institute ha ka ndị diplomat na ndị agha ndị ọchịchị na-abata n'ala anyị nwere ike jiri ya wee na-amụta asụsụ Igbo mana ha dere ya n'olu ndị Mbaise ka ha ji wee dee o wee bụrụ naanị akwụkwọ bụrụ ezigbo ibu ị ga-asị na onye ọbụla chọrọ ịmụ Igbo in a very simplified format ka ha jikwa wee dee ya mana o nwere olu ha ji wee dee ya o nweghị akwụkwọ ọzọ ị ga-asị na ọ hapụ na eji amụta asụsụ Igbo akwụkwọ anyị na-ede dịka m si kwuo edegodi ya ede ọ naghị abụ n'akara naanị otu akwụkwọ ọzọ m mara edere n'akara bụ nke bụ Igbo mother tongue mana ahụghị m ya nweghị ebe ọbụla ọ dị na oge ịntanetị ụmụaka nwere ike ịzụta mgbe si ka m baa ọrụ n'ihi na dịka m si kwuo when I keep complaining about something I want to do something about it mbido ihe a erugo otu afọ na ọkara eji dewe akwụkwọ mkpụrụ ụbọchị one ma one dị o wee pụta so I would proudly hit my chest today that this is the most advanced, this is the biggest, this is the most advanced collection and guide for anyone who would want to learn the Igbo language from the very beginning. Edere m ya nke ọ ga-abụ na ịtụtụrụ ya ọ bụrụ na onweghị onye nkụzi nọ gị n'akụkụ ị nwere ike iji ya wee na-amụta asụsụ Igbo ọtụtụ okwu dị na ya so it is also written to accommodate some of the new words, new coinage and to also fit in the modern world that we are in today. Ihe taa ịbanye ihu na enwego microwave ha akpọ ya igwe ndakwa nri ihu na enwego washing machine ihu na enwezi ihe dị na nke akpọrọ sitting room mana ihe a na-emebe anyị bụ ime ụlọ ihu na abatago na enwego sitting room na-enwego ọtụtụ ihe na-enwego TV na-enwego ihe niile kedu ihe a na-akpọgasị ya kedu ihe anyị nwere ike ịkpọ ya anyị tinyechere ebe a iwe gaa na ịhụ dọkịta gị ọ ga-akọwara gị ma ị nwere zigizam ị nwere chronic concoroshema ị maghị ihe ọ pụtara mana ị bịa zaworo akwụkwọ a ị gaa na ya ihu na o nwere ebe edere ihe gbasara ahụike na o nwere mkpụrụ okwu a na-akpọ ya nke ga-eme ka onye a na-akọwara ghọta ya ị gaa na ọtụtụ ngalaba ọrụ dịgasị iche iche different types of careers you will see that it is covered in this book. Anyị kwuru maka aha na akwụkwọ so we have some names, we have praise names, we have some pet names, romantic names, mmadụ nwere ike ịkpọ onye ọzọ. We have, so it is written in 3 parts. The first part is basic. Mbido, ibido na mbido wee mụwanya bụ asụsụ Igbo. The second part is the grammar aspect. The third part is the cultural aspect, which is a holistic overview if you want to learn language. You can't learn language and leave the culture. Maka no ịmụtakwanu Eke, Orie, Afọ, Nkwọ iwe mata na ọ bụ izu ndị Igbo bụrụkwa ihe ndị Igbo ji na-ebe anya n'ihe dịgasị iche iche ghọta ekperemchi na nkwenye so ha niile ọ ga-enyere gị aka ị na-amụta ya n'asụsụ ịmụta ya nke ọma ịmụta ọjị ịma amụta ya this fruit is called ọjị mana ị ga-amụta ka esi awụ ọjị mụta ihe a na-ekwu n'iwu ọjị mụta ọtụtụ ilu ya na ya ga-eso ị bịakwa na proverbs ịma proverb means ilu ị ga-abịakwa ịmụta ụfọdụ ilu mụta ihe ha pụtara mụta ka esi atinye ya ha niile dị n'akwụkwọ ya bụ na edere m ya ihe a bụ m ga-asị gị ọkacha ọrụ rugoro kemgbe m bidokwa ikpebe asụsụ Igbo ọkacha ihe ọrụ rugoro ga-anọzi nọgidezie nọkarịa mgbe m nwa nọrọ nwa pụọ ọka nọrọ so something that will be permanent, something that will actually be holistic, permanent and actually aid in the survival of the Igbo language because we need a lot of literatures. We need more. We need people to keep contributing and writing more. And this is why I brought out this book. And so far, I am glad with the acceptance. It's just few days that we release it on the 14th of February, which is a gift of love. On aga, anyị ji nwayọ wee na-agbasa ya bụ ozi. Ihe ọzọ anyị ga-emezi ugbu a bụ to actually get the kind of funding we need to mass produce it so that it will be in every major libraries, especially in the US, in the UK, and some other countries where you find the Igbo people. It will be in all major libraries, the museums, where students can now have access to them freely, like every other book of the people that you find. In Ghana, don't only a Library of Congress. If you know to akwụkwọ eji amụta Spanish, Portuguese, na ndị otu ya. Ị gaa n'ọtụtụ library ụlọ akwụkwọ dịgasị iche, mahadum dị iche ebe a. Ị hụ na ọtụtụ akwụkwọ eji amụta asụsụ dịgasị ndị iche. Ị bịa na nke Igbo, nwa nke ị ga-ahụ. Ya ihe njidere akwụkwọ a. Ọbata n'ọgbọ, ọbata mgbe asụsụ ndị ọzọ nọ, akwanyere ya ugwu. Asị, o nwere asụsụ akwụkwọ asụsụ pụta nke a.
Yeah, I have to admit, akwụkwọ kwupụta ka dị mkpa. Ifuru ka ịchọrọ ijide na-ebu ebu na-apụ ya apa, ị na-apụ ya ka ọ garada. I mean, it's a very, very big thing of pride to be in the US and you're able to produce a book that size. And you're already thinking, knowing that the language is going to be competing with other languages, Spanish, German, Chinese, Indian, whatever it is, Mexican, or whatever language they're speaking there. Igbo language is going to be competing, and you cannot compete if you don't have any reference material. So, and you've mentioned about funding. So, who are you looking at really to maybe help with funding for mass production, even for libraries at home too?
Well, I actually believe all the time to start. First of all, the funding will start from my own small pockets. I get a bit back where most of the things I do actually eat into my funding for living, my living expenses. So when I buy
Oja festival.
I'm telling you, yeah, ịmakwa n'ihe ndị Igbo na ihe na-agbawa obi maka na dịka m si kwuo ọtụtụ n'ime anyị echetara mgbe na-eme ọja echetara m ka m gagidere n'ụlọ ọrụ ndị mmadụ. I kept going from offices to offices. Ndị ji nwere ike ịkwado agaghị enye mana ha ga-eji ya wee mee ihe ndị ọzọ ị na-afụ anya. Ọkwa ụbọchị a ka ewepụtara akwụkwọ enye onye isi obodo wepụtara akwụkwọ 500 million. Nke ahụ iwe hụ na ọ bụrụ na ịgbadata na ka e were ego tinye na ihe anyị na-eme. Ọtụtụ ndị ọ dị ka anyị bịa na UK, ha nwere the British Council Art na-abụ bụ extension. Ha nwechara their art departments as a unit of the government na-enyere aka n'ihe ọbụla a na-eme. Ọkacha ihe gbasara ịkwalite ọdịnala omenala be ha, ihe gbasara ịkwalite. So you access government funding, which unfortunately we do not really have. So ya bụ ọzọ bụkwa funding sikwa ndị ọzọ n'aka mba ụwa. Enwechere ihe dịka funding for the sustainability of some heritage nke na-esikwa n'ezigbo ike maka na ọtụtụ mgbe ndị na-ewepụta funding na nwere ihe ha bụ n'obi, o nwere ihe ha chọrọ ka eme. Ọkwa ndị naghị eme ya otu ahụ, ị gaghị enweta ego ahụ. Ọ ebe a ka ọ na-abịa onye esi ike. Ya mkpa m na-ekwuru ya otu a maka na asụkwa na onye kwuo ebe o ji amara ka esi abata ịghọtago mara ka ga-esi jide ya. M na-ekwu ya otu maka na ama m na ndị Igbo ji nkụ, ama m na ndị Igbo ji ego, ama m na ndị Igbo o nwere ndị Igbo ji ego ha amaghọ dị ka ha ga-esi mee ya. Ha na-achọ ihe ha ga-atinye ego ahụ. Na-asị biko nke a bụrụkwa maka mụ, nke a abụghị maka mụ chachacha, nke a bụ maka ka anyị mee ya ka ụmụ anyị ebe ọ bụla ha nọ nwee ihe ha nwere ike iwepụta dịka akwụkwọ. Ọ bụ na ndị ọzọ wepụta nke ha wepụta maka na o nwere ọtụtụ ihe nrita. There are lots of opportunities we are losing. Anyị anaghị enwetezi n'ihi na ya ji asụsụ anyị kpọrọ ihe. Otu n'ime ha wee bụrụ the Fulbright program. A na Fulbright program n'ala anyị obodo anụ a na-akpọbata ndị nkụzi, ndị ụmụ akwụkwọ gụrụ Igbo, ndị gụrụ Igbo, ndị na-akụzi ndị Igbo. A na-ewepụta ndị ọzọ mana ha anaghị ewepụta ndị Igbo. Ewepụga Igbo, asụsụ Igbo na ya kacha ya, asụsụ Igbo adịghịzi na ya. Mana afọ niile eji akpọbata ọtụtụ ndị Yoruba, eji akpọbata ọtụtụ ndị Ugwu, mana ndị Igbo anọghọ na ya. N'ihi gịnị? Na ndị Igbo dịzi ka ndị ejighị asụsụ nke ha kpọrọ ihe. Nwere ọtụtụ ihe ndị ọzọ a na-eme. Ị na-abata ebe a na-ekwu extra languages to speak. Ị na-atinye akwụkwọ gị, ị na-atinye akwụkwọ application gị n'ime ihe ndị a. Ị bịa na languages, ọtụtụ n'ime ha ma akwụkwọ nke m nwa gara, ịhụ na a ga-atinye asụsụ ndị ọzọ anyị na ha nọ. A sịrị na obodo anyị bụ asụsụ atọ ihe na-anọchite ha. mana ịpụta na mba akwụkwọ asụsụ abụọ na-anọchite obodo anyị ọ bụghị atọ anwụ ha anaghị akpọ Igbo ebe a na-akpọ ndị nke ọzọ n'ihi na ndị Igbo anaghị atinye n'anya n'ihe ahụ Igbo onye ahụ anaghị atinye uchu na ya anyị na-asị na onweghị ihe ahụ bụ mana o nwere ihe maka na ọtụtụ ihe nrita anyị kwesịrị ị na-enwe anyị anaghị enweta ya onye ọzọ batawa ọ sị na ya na-asụ bekee na ya na-asụ Yoruba mana onye Igbo bịawa ị ga-asị na ị na-asụ bekee n'ihi na tinyegodo Igbo ka iri ike si na ị na-asụ Igbo ihu gị ya na mgbe ahụ asịza gị ị ga-egosikwa na o nwere asụsụ ndị ọzọ ị mara o siweziere gị ike ya bụ na o nwere ọtụtụ ike anyị kwesịrị ị na-erita ya maka erita n'ihi na anyị ejighị nke anyị wee kpọrọ ihe ịpụta ị na-eme research iwu ndị ọzọ na-eme nke ha a na-enweta fọnd na-enweta ọtụtụ ihe ya abụghị ka m bịa kpọwa ha niile afa mana ụmụ ọtụtụ ebe anyị anaghị erita n'ihi na anyị dịka ndị Igbo asịgo na ihe onwe ihe ọ bụ anyị na-ekwu ya a na-eti mkpu a eticheri ya akụchara ya aka ọ na onwe ihe ọzọ anyị ga-ekwuzi osi otu ahụ wee gaa mana dịka si kwuo ọkwanụ mmadụ ga-eweta mgbanwe asị na tụpem bụ osimiri ya eshie ọ bụrụ na aka weta aka eto ogologo ọnụ eju ya bụ na mụ aka na-eweta aka nke m na-asịkwa ndị ọzọ wetụkwa o nwere ndị ọzọ na-agbagote nwere ndị ọzọ na-atụnyekwu olu nwayọọ mana ihe ndị Igbo onye ọbụla chere na o nwere ike inyere aka ka ebipụta akwụkwọ abipụtasa ya nnukwu wee kesasịa ya ebe niile mana United States mana United Kingdom na ndị ọzọ na-ekwu ya na a na-akpọ unu onye ọbụla ga-emenwu ya ime ya anyị ete ya na ọgị nwa mere ya
asị na kọra na-enwetara onwe ya n'ọka akara nwaanyị ka ọ na-atụkwasị di ya ọkwa yeah, and you know, just before we go, because we're almost out of time, you know, something huge has been happening, and let's talk about gentleman Mike Ejeagha for a bit, because a lot of people don't know that you were the very first person working closely with what's his name? I don't know, his name just flew off my head. Charles Obu. Two of you re-energized and revitalized gentleman Mike Ejeagha before any other persons that came through, before the Gwogwogwongwo came. It was you, it was Charles that did it. And it needed to be said, before every other person, before Mike Ejeagha's house turned into a pilgrimage center, it was you, it was Charles that organized and raised funds from people, and his house was renovated and painted. It was you. So what drove you to do this? We have about 2 minutes to go. What drove you to do this? And looking back at what has happened in the life of gentleman Mike Ejeagha, how proud are you about what you did?
I am very, 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 very proud. Onwe ihe bụ na mmadụ nwụọ nwa ọfụka nwa ahụ toro. Nwe ihe bụ na mmadụ kụnyere mkpụrụ o mechaa ị gaa na mkpụrụ ahụ gaa ghọtakwa nke ị ga-ata ya ịkụnye mkpụrụ ọka ị gaa ghọta ogbe ọka ị ga-ahụ n'ọkụ ọ na-atọ ezigbo ụtọ. Mike Ejeagha's journey was something I am privileged to be part of. I remember in the evangelizing time, the time we started our evangelism, I was making my hair. When I was talking, I kept listening to the song. It was my ringing tone. And then I said, hey, Woka, Uturaku people, Woka, Koromo, Wama, Monaza, Gapokia. What do we say? Oh, you're not coming to some no, it's only work up and only typical Puna Obiagweba. Say, Onya, Woka Ube, a simon bow. That was when I began. That was in 2015. I began the journey of looking for Mike Ejeagha. Then I was at the ESBS, Enugu State Broadcasting Service. So we started looking for it. It took a while to connect, you know, because then he wasn't really allowing any invitation at all. But we broke through, and in 2018, that was when I invited Charles into, and that was strictly because of his music case in court. And then we started meeting the government and all of that. And today, it is what it is today. There is documentary, there is there's a lot of people visiting. Like you said, the house is pretty a pilgrimage now. So yes, we started in 2015. And I kind of adopted him as a grandfather, having not known any of my grandfathers. And I kept in close contact, visited, was there, was part of the family. I became like his daughter. I mean, at a point, people didn't even know that he was not my father at all. But today, I am so glad that we didn't give up.
Jamu Manando. Yes.
Today, I am happy that journey, a lot of the invitations, people had to even ask, how do I get to meet Jaya? Today, I am glad that it is where it is today. And you can see, like we said,
yes,
even
that's correct. We're out of time, Amarachi. So back to that book. If someone wants to buy the book, how much is it?
On Amazon. On seller, Amazon $55. Now seller, sell off 15,000. You have the digital access. It's the hard copy. Unfortunately, it's not in Nigeria now because, like I said, except somebody fund it. Okay, she's making mana ukwa or the Amazon.
But can I have there? Oh, the ma. And Amarachi Atama Ugu Dalu. Chineke wagu umenalulu ni na alulu ndi Igbo. This is where we'll drop the anchor. Thank you so much for talking to us from Colorado, USA. Amarachi Atamagu is a chant performance artist, Igbo language instructor at Harvard University, culture curator, and mother tongue advocate. Thank you so much for talking to us on the Eastern Eye tonight. That's the program. We'll be here tomorrow, same time, for another edition of the show. But of course, join me tomorrow morning on Afia Radio 99.3 for Straight Talk. That's at 9 a.m. Until then, my name is Alex Obodo. Good night.
My name is Ubon.